Breaking news this hour, a jury has just found Steve Bannon guilty on both counts of criminal contempt of Congress. Now, the former Trump strategist faces a mandatory minimum of 30 days in jail.
CNN's Sarah Murray joins us now from the courthouse. Sarah, we're also joined by Ellie Honig and Nick Ackerman here. Sarah, tell us what's just happened in the courtroom.
Well, Steve Bannon has been found guilty on 2 counts of criminal contempt of Congress. He smiled and smirked, my colleague Caitlin Poland says, when the verdict was read. She was in the courtroom as this was happening. So I think we can see this former White House chief strategist is just as defiant as ever. You know, with this conviction, he faces 30 days behind bars at a minimum, as well as potentially thousands of dollars of fines. This is not something that's going to happen immediately, though. The judge has set October 21st as the sentencing date, so it'll still be a few months before we know what sentence is actually going to be handed down. You know, it's also been clear from Bannon's attorneys kind of throughout this trial that they do intend to appeal. And because these are misdemeanor charges, you know, it's very possible that we could see the judge delay any kind of, you know, whether Bannon has to kind of serve any kind of sentence until after they go through that appeals process. We just don't know that yet. What we do know is this is a big boost to the House Select Committee. This is, you know, a reaffirmation of their investigative power, of their subpoena power at a time when they're wrangling with a bunch of different witnesses. You know, Peter Navarro comes to mind. He's another person who defied his subpoena and is poised to go to trial over that. It's also a win for the Justice Department. They've come under a lot of scrutiny, a lot of criticism in terms of how they're investigating the January 6th attack on the Capitol. I think people have wanted to see, you know, more from them in a number of cases. In this case, they got a very prominent conviction.
All right, Sarah, stay with us. I want to go to Nick, just joining the panel. Your reaction to this guilty verdict?
I think it's extremely significant. And the reason really is in light of what happened yesterday in the House hearing. Yeah. What we found there was on that day, on January 6th, Donald Trump was asked repeatedly by people in the White House, everybody around him, including his family, to get up there and tell his supporters to go home, to stand down, and to leave the Capitol. And what you find here is that who were the people that were egging him on? Who were the people that really pushed this entire, you know, plan of violence? And obviously, Steve Bannon comes to light as the first person on the list. Yeah. I mean, he was in charge of the war room at the Warwick Hotel. This is where all of the people who were really not government employees, Roger Stone, Rudy Giuliani, his chief investigator, all of these people were centered around there. None of them government employees. None of them were like Matthew Partinger, who got up and said, you know, I took my oath very seriously to defend the Constitution. None of these people took an oath. These were all ne'er-do-wells, people who were just around Donald Trump and basically doing his bidding. So the fact that one of the chief architects of January 6th was convicted today on these 2 charges, I think is extremely significant.
And we've learned that there were those 2 calls between Steve Bannon and former President Trump just before, on his War Room podcast, he said, all hell will break loose tomorrow. And that's what the committee wanted to know, what he knew leading up to that statement.
But even further, we had the other little bits of detail that came out during the course of the hearings. Yeah. One, that there was a telephone call from the chief of staff of Donald Trump to Roger Stone. Now, what was that about? We don't know who was talking to whom, but we know Roger Stone was also at the Warwick Hotel. We also know that that he was asked, the chief of staff was asked to actually go to the Warwick Hotel, and it took someone like Cassidy Hutchinson to say, look, you shouldn't be going there, and he still went by phone. So we don't know what was said there, but there is a whole bunch of tantalizing little details that came out in the course of that hearing that make you wonder what was going on at the Warwick Hotel.
But Ellie, does this make it harder for the committee to get the information that they were seeking from Steve Bannon, or easier? I mean, the reason, just to remind everybody, that he was just found guilty is because he didn't hand over documents and he didn't show up, though he was subpoenaed. So will they ever get to see the information that they wanted now that he's been convicted?
So it's important to note, this is about punishment. This is not about forcing somebody to testify. Steve Bannon will not testify unless he just has a unilateral change of heart. Now, this is a really important win for DOJ and for Congress, but it's a qualified win. And here's why. Steve Bannon is being punished now because he defied a congressional subpoena. DOJ charged him. They got their conviction. That's the win. But there's still a bit of a mixed message here because remember, DOJ chose not to charge Mark Meadows. They chose not to charge Dan Scavino. So Steve Bannon is going to federal prison for at least 30 days unless he wins on appeal, and I give him next to no chance of winning on appeal, while Mark Meadows and Dan Scavino did the same thing. They defied the subpoena. They provided no evidence. They left some of the gaps in the evidence that Nick was talking about, and they are walking scot-free. But better that somebody is held accountable than nobody.
Sarah, let me come back out to you. It was a last-ditch effort. Some viewed it as a way to avoid this trial by telling the committee, I will participate. I will cooperate. Does this conviction preclude any future participation with that committee now?
You know, I think that one of the issues always around this case is that agreeing to testify was never going to solve his criminal contempt of Congress charges. You know, we heard from the prosecution today, give me a break. You know, why is he suddenly making this offer in the days leading right up to his trial? You know, prosecutors sort of cast this as an insincere effort and said he hasn't even started, you know, handing over documents, which is one of the things he's now been found guilty of. So they sort of saw it as a ploy. You know, if you're Steve Bannon at this point and you are now convicted of these 2 counts, you sort of wonder what is the impetus at this point to be at all helpful to the committee. The reality is they may never get the information that they were seeking from Steve Bannon. And I think, you know, the Willard Hotel conversation you were just having is a good example of that. The committee made clear that one of the things that they wanted to hear from Steve Bannon is what was going on in this sort of war room that he and others were participating in at the Willard Hotel. And we have heard very little of that in these public hearings from the January 6th committee.